The mind is very creative and quick. Way too quick. You see two dots and a line, and the brain fills it in with, it's a face. I do it with other things too, not just faces. Just deciding what something is a bit too early. Music making analogies are the easiest for me, so you'll have to bear with me. Okay, so I sit in front of the instrument, I play a few notes and start looping them. And either think that, oh wow, it's going somewhere, or quite the opposite. No, it's rubbish and no one wants to hear that. And both of those feel final. The first time listening is mostly reacting, trying to put a label on it, trying to decide if it's good or not, and that kind of closes it. But if something interrupts that just a little bit, like trying to find another cable or a charger, or just going for a walk. Then when you come back, it's not as fixed anymore. You don't know if it's good or not. It feels a little different. It's kind of a thing on its own. And I think this is the best part. You're not trying to finish it as quickly as possible. You're not trying to force it into something. Just let it breathe, step away for a little while, and you just leave enough space for something new to appear. It is hard. I usually want to get things done as quickly as I can, because I want to know if there is something in there. Is it going anywhere? As a result, I usually stop exploring other options, or just not enjoy the process altogether. I will also be less inclined to take any breaks because I don't want to scare away something that might be in there. Only recently I gave myself permission not to finish everything that I start, and surprisingly I started finishing more things, I think. Today I wanted to talk about one specific technique that helped me quite a lot. I'm sure it's not news for a seasoned music tracker user, but as I'm learning this stuff by myself just now, I think that's quite helpful. I think it might be useful for you as well. Okay, we are on the phrase page and now moving into the instruments page. We pick a sample. I like to pick something longer. Then we use the slicer mode. In LittleGPTracker, the slicing means that the sample is chopped into X number of equal parts. I usually skip the number of slicer selection and move back to the phrase page. Place the triggers randomly with random notes information. I've already done it. One important technical bit is that when you're in slicing mode, the first slice is on C-2, note C-2. The second slice is on C#-2 and so on. I spread the notes information slightly across 1 or 2 octaves between C-2 and C0. Now, the fun part, you go back into the instruments page, you start the sequencer and change the number of slices. So at the moment it says 3 slices, 4, 5, 8, Effectively, what you are doing is changing not just the number of slices, but also where the sample is cut. So without updating any trigger note information, you change the sequence significantly. If the trigger has a note 5 steps away from C-2, like F-2, and your sample is cut into 3 pieces only, then anything past D-2 will be silent, which is also quite helpful sometimes and leads to unusual results. You can play with root note. You can shift it by octave. You can play with feedback and everything else. I might come back to that in the future videos, but probably not today. I also wanted to share the mistake that I made in the past. It's not really a mistake, it works, especially at later stages of the track development, but I feel like it's a limitation if used at the very beginning when you start working on the new track. In the past, I started with the drum loop. I usually build the drum loop first, let it play, and then I do the slicer of the longer musical samples afterwards, as described above. But what ends up happening is I inevitably lock myself at the beginning of the drum loop, if you know what I mean. You always feel like the beginning of the loop is on the first kick. But if you slice the clip without any drums part first, the interesting loop might start on trigger number 7 or something, somewhere in the middle. You wouldn't notice it otherwise if you have the drum loop already running. So try playing with the slicer thing first before you do the drums. Of course, when that happens, you have another problem, because if you feel like the beginning of that interesting loop is on trigger number 7, it will be much harder to work with that kind of phrase when you build in the track. What you need to do is to grab something to write with. Just write down where you think the loop starts. Basically, you just need to move everything to the top. You need to align the beginning of the phrase with the beginning of the loop. If that was trigger number 7, you need to move it 7 steps up. I'll show you here. Okay, let's pretend that this is the phrase page. You see 16 triggers laid out here, and this is the sequence that we played with. And we think our interesting loop starts on trigger number 7. We don't have drums yet, and we want to make our lives easier. We want to move the beginning of the loop to the very top of the phrase. Here's when the pen and some piece of paper or the board helps you. You need to note down how far do you need to move this whole thing. Luckily, in LittleGPTracker, you can select a range of triggers. So what I would do, I would select everything past trigger number 7 and move this whole bit right here to the very top. D-2, it used to be trigger number 7, becomes trigger number 1. C-1 was trigger number 10, it becomes trigger 4. The next one was 11th, it becomes trigger number 5. So basically everything is shifted 6 steps up. The only confusing part for me personally always is this guy at the moment sits in front of the beginning, so it will have to go down, and so you'll need to recreate it manually. At least I couldn't figure out the way how I can copy this bit and paste it somewhere else. I guess you could create a new phrase, but that just complicates things. How I usually do it is, if I know everything went up 6 steps, so this used to be trigger number 2, I deduct 2, so we have 4 left, and then I deduct 4 from 16 from the bottom, so it becomes trigger number 12. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but you know what I mean, right? So think about this. Before we did the rearrangement, we had the last trigger on step number 14. This one was 1, 2, 3, 4 steps away, so the easiest check would be, if this trigger number 14 became trigger number 8, this one will have to be 12, 4 steps away, down. I find this approach very helpful. I think the small obstacles on the way from getting from the blank screen to somewhat interesting loop, they help you actually. All these problems with misalignment of the beginning of the phrase and beginning of the loop, having to write it down, having to move it around, it just gives you more time, more breathing room to appreciate what you're doing and maybe enjoy the process a little more. I don't know. All this friction forces you to stop and take pauses. And the process becomes exploratory by its very nature. And it's fun. Yeah, it's fun. Just enough for me. Okay, I think that's it from me today. Just go pick up an instrument, have fun, and do not take yourself too seriously, I guess.